Welcome back, everybody, to Gemology for Schmucks. My name is Peter Nelson, and once again, I'm here to tell you everything you need to know about gemstones. Throughout the episodes on this channel, I've been talking about the characteristics of the gemstone and how we evaluate them. How do we distinguish imitations and simulants and treated stones from natural stones, etc., etc. And I'm sure that some of you are asking a very valid question, which is, how can I possibly know all of this right now? And truth is, it's a lifelong learning process. However, you don't need to get to the end before you start. You do need knowledge, yes, but what you need now, more than anything else, is to know who you can trust and who you can't. People that are willing to put their reputation on the line and their experience on the line to do business with you. So today we're going to be talking about one category of those people, which are the laboratories. Now, there are many different laboratories even in this building alone. In the Jewelry Trade Center, there are at least 5 different laboratories. And in the surrounding area, there are even more. Now, these laboratories offer a variety of services. Sometimes they offer something called a gemstone report. So a lot of people, when they're doing trading in the marketplace, don't have access to things like a microscope. They may only have their loupe. So even if you have the knowledge to distinguish treated stones or synthetic stones from natural stones, if you don't have the right equipment, then how are you possibly going to know in that buying moment whether or not you've got the right stone or not? And this is where the laboratories really come in, because you can take your stone to the laboratory. They have all of the equipment and they have additional experience, and they can tell you pretty quickly whether or not the stone is treated, or if it's synthetic, or if it's natural, etc., etc. Sometimes they're unable to do this because there are so many gemstones in the world and there are so many treatments in the world, and sometimes those need to be tested by advanced labs. So there are different tiers of labs depending on what kind of services you need. So case in point, if you're going to buy sapphires and somebody's like, hey, I've got this nice untreated sapphire, you want to buy it? And you look at it and you're like, wow, that's a fantastic blue color, but what is it really? And so you can take that stone, go over to a lab, and within one day you can have a report that says that the stone is treated or not treated. You can get confirmation that it is actually a sapphire, and you can move on with your business. If you have in mind that the stone might be treated, even if the small labs do not have the equipment to verify whether or not this particular treatment has been applied to the gem, there are larger labs that are also available. Some of those huge names that everybody has heard about. Those larger laboratories that make you wait longer will typically have more advanced machines that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. So there's at least 2 tiers of labs. There's the ones that have high technology but make you wait, and then there are the smaller labs that can tell you much faster. The smaller labs are able to give you gem identification and make you aware of whether or not there's any treatments that might have been applied to the stone. Anything that they're conscious of. Because you have to keep in mind, these people have potentially decades of experience. And I'll say that with the caveat of not all labs are the same. They're not all equal. Gemologists are different. This isn't something you just put into a machine and they go beep boop, and all of a sudden your answer comes out. These are people that rely on their eyes. Even with the so-called big labs that have the advanced machines, the actual determination of whether or not the stone has been treated or whether or not it's synthetic, etc., is still based on the eye. So these are people that have a lot of experience and have seen tens of thousands or close to millions of stones, and they're going at it with a microscope. And that is exactly why it's so important to work with people that rely on their integrity. Because even if somebody has experience, if they don't have integrity, how are you going to get the truth? So how can you make sure that you get a lab that relies on its integrity and that practices honest business? Full disclosure, you have to find other people that you trust. Find people that are already in the trade in the location where you're going, and you ask them, which labs do you trust? And then the second method is you can try and trick the lab. And what I mean by that is if you have a stone that might be treated but difficult to tell whether or not it's been treated, you can send it to the lab and see what they'll say. Or another thing that's a bit common is that some people will try and get, for example, a special color designation. In rubies, there's something like pigeon's blood. And so they'll send the stone to that company and be like, this is a pigeon's blood stone. They'll tell them. And depending on that lab, if you can get the lab to change that name to pigeon's blood because you want it, and if that lab is willing to comply with your desire, even if it doesn't match what your eye says, then that tells you that maybe this lab is just trying to make money off of paper certificates as opposed to what they actually believe. Now, it's not all doom and gloom. Every lab has different standards for some things. Not all things are set in stone. Some things are set in stone, like whether or not a stone splits light. The refractive index is also set in stone. If you can't read that, that's user error. But other things like color designation are based off the lab's idea. Stones' origins are very difficult to tell. Even the humongous labs with lots of experience and lots of data don't always get origin correct. And that has more to do with how complicated the geological conditions of our world are. So before we go and talk to the lab, once again, I'd like to remind you that it's important to talk to people that have integrity And also, it's important to test those people and see if their integrity bends. So let's go and check out this lab and see what they have to say. Thank you very much for having me today. Would you take a moment to introduce yourself and your company for us?
Yeah, of course. It would be pleasure. My name is Patarat Termpaisit.
Can you tell us a little bit about your lab? How long have you been in business? What made you decide to open a lab? All of this.
Actually, we aiming for consultancy for people who are in the gem business.
Okay.
So GCI is Gemological Consultancy International. We opened since 2012, so it has been like 8 years already. We would like to help the people in this business because we are in the location of gem business.
Okay.
So many people buying and selling gemstone without any knowledge of gemology.
Sure.
So we help them by using what we call is verbal testing service.
Okay.
So we use basic equipment of the gemology to quick identify what stone it is.
So when you say basic tools of gemology, what does that involve?
It's like many course of gemology, they're going to teach you according to this equipment. So such as microscope, polariscope, refractometer, spectroscope.
What kinds of things can that help you to know about a stone? So for example, is there anything that you would need other machines to know about?
If we need another machine to help us, we're going to send outsource to do the advanced testing, such as FTIR or EDXRF for advanced testing.
And what would those instruments tell people?
For example, if you come with the corundum or ruby sapphire that is very, very clean, without any inclusion, you can see with the microscope, that is very difficult to detect natural or synthetic. So the equipment that is helpful in this case will be EDXRF, which tracking its element. If natural occurrence, they will have a set of natural occurring elements in the stone, but if it is synthetic, then they will have another set.
Oh, so inclusions can actually help us to know about natural stones versus synthetic.
Many of the stones, inclusion, it's tell the natural occurrence of the stone.
Oh, okay. So a lot of my clients start to talk about things like pigeon's blood color and royal blue color. Can you tell us how does a lab like this distinguish between which color is which?
Okay, that is start from trade actually.
Oh.
So the trade prefer to have like a specific color on a specific stone. Okay, so for our point, we have a set of the comparison stone. This one could be pigeon blood, but this one will not call pigeon blood.
So you have a set of stones with different colors,
Yes.
and that helps you to know what qualifies for pigeon's blood.
Yes.
Okay, so each lab could have its own standard. Is that what you're saying? Is that possible?
I don't know, for each one they have their own standard in which way.
Okay.
But in terms of diamonds, to be DEF color, you also have comparison stone.
Okay.
So why don't about this kind of set to compare the color also?
So you've been working in a lab now for more than 8 years. How did you get into gemstones?
Actually, I start with my bachelor degree on Sinakalin Viro University or SWU. Okay, 4 years of gem and jewelry. Okay, actually, it's the major of material science. Okay, but focus on gem and jewelry. So I learned lots of things, but I would say once I graduate from my bachelor degree, I'm like a duck.
Like a duck?
Yes,
So
like
what does
a
that
duck.
mean to you? Tasty
Means-
when roasted?
No. Means like you can fly, you can swim, you can dive in the water, but not so well. So I need to find out which part of gems and jewelry that I would like to work with. So I focus on gemstone. I got hired with GIA Thailand as an instructor. I worked for 8 years in GIA as an instructor, gemology instructor.
So you had 4 years of university, 8 years as an instructor, and then you came and opened your lab.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
The story thickens.
So I joined AIGS for 3 years.
Okay.
Okay, and after that I opened my own laboratory.
So, in your opinion, studying gemology for a 6-month course compared to 18 years of experience, it can't be the same thing, right? So at what point did you feel that you had confidence in understanding gemstone?
Until you see the market.
Okay.
For example, if you come out with a ruby, you feel like, oh, must be a ruby. Could not be spinel.
Okay.
By, let's say, you're looking for some direction of pleochroism.
Sure.
And after that, you look in the microscope for natural or synthetic. But anyway, you need to spend experience on that. What the school give is the skill and how to use the tools to help you.
Okay. So, in your opinion, is it necessary to study gemology to be a gem trader?
You think about if you sit in front of the showcase and try to sell the same thing over times. I have seen some people in this market, they're selling just only emerald.
Oh.
They feel confident with emeralds.
Okay.
But how about if one day they find out one green stone that looks like emerald, let's say synthetic emerald,
Okay.
how do they distinguish if they don't know the skill of gemology? So I think this is an important part to come into this business.
People that have not studied gemology, do you feel that there's ever a communication gap where they just don't understand what you're trying to explain to them about their stone?
Of course, they might not understand whatever we present in the document or in the certificate. This is our goal to do the laboratory as well, because we face to the customer, we check right in front of them, and then we will happy to explain them whatever they don't really understand. Okay. So we are the part of consultancy as well, not just only the lab rat that you sit just behind the table or behind the room.
Here's their certificate, get out.
Yeah.
It's a sapphire. Okay, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it, Ajahn Pat.
Yeah, very
And
welcome.
I wish you the best of luck with your laboratory.
You too.
All right, that's all we've got for this week's episode of Gemology for Schmucks. Thank you for joining me. I hope that you enjoyed this interview with the laboratory, and I really just want to nail home the point that you have to trust people in this business. I'm not saying you have to trust everybody, but you have to find the people that you can trust and learn how to measure them. So you can either go by following people that you trust and find out who they trust, or you can find ways to test these people and make sure that you know how far you can trust them. Labs are an incredibly important resource, especially in this world that's getting perpetually more complicated. So it's important that you find a good lab, and then once you find them, you accept what they have to say. None of this, are you sure? 100% sure? These kind of comments do not help. Speaking of comments, if you've got any comments or questions, please leave those in the comments area below. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.